This is the Retirement Solution Podcast with financial advisor Jon Hicks, founder of J. Hagan Capital.
'Tis the season, back to school. Are the girls all shopped up with the new outfits and the new? They don't do backpacks.
It's one of the great things about schools with uniforms. Ooh. We don't have to argue about booty shorts or whatever it is on any given day. I don't have to worry about telling them pull that skirt down. What are we doing? Wear it at the right length because all that's done by the school, which
Perfect.
Is so much better for me. Right? That's one of the biggest debates, if you will, that goes on in my home on any given day. It's what are you wearing? Why would you want to be seen looking like that? And it's one of those things. And of course, I grew up in a house of boys. So I didn't really think as much about that kind of stuff. Right. It just isn't, wasn't one of those things. My parents were like, are you really going to wear that t-shirt instead of, something that's got a collar on it? Or do you want the Cheese Whiz stains on that shirt that you're walking out with? I mean, that was pretty much it. Probably not Cheese Whiz as much as playing out in the dirt. Yeah. But it's just amazing. So I'm very grateful that there's a school uniform for sure. In our future. Decisions
being made for the Hicks family.
Yes.
In the fall season. I'm here
Happily.
for it. Speaking of back to school, it's not just about the younger kids returning to the classroom. Because for many parents, it's also time to start writing tuition checks.
Oh, yes, it is.
Moving kids into dorm rooms, figuring out how to pay for another year of college costs, because those are affordable.
It's unbelievable what they are. We had clients this past weekend moving their kids into Ole Miss. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. Great state school.
Yep.
In-state, out-of-state tuition. I was still alarmed when they told me what they were paying. Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
Alarm is the only way to describe what a lot of people face, the sticker shock that is putting somebody through college. And I think that because of the costs, they've gone up so much. It's not just about parents anymore. Grandparents are helping out with tuition costs. So some financial experts are actually warning how helping kids earn a degree can actually come at the price of putting your own financial well-being at risk, particularly when it comes to your retirement savings. So I wanted to ask you, 'tis the season, back to school, we're in that mode, but where should somebody be drawing the line between helping their kids or grandkids pay for school versus protecting themselves financially?
Yeah, so this is one of those questions that comes up all the time, but especially around August. It's just one of those things where we're trying to figure out, when someone's thinking about that retirement journey, we start talking about, tell me what things that you think you want to spend on. And people say, college tuition for the kids or sometimes even, grandkids and things like that. And I know, I'm now right here in my 50s. And now we're looking at, I've got a couple years before I've got my first of two that'll go to college. We hope. We think that she's going to be cut out for that. And then I've got 5 years in between them before I've got, round number 2 for college. And I'm looking at prices and seeing what they're doing. And it's kind of nutty. Yeah. And here's what I'd say is a principle when we're thinking about, so whether you're out there and in your late 40s or mid 50s or maybe even early 60s, and you're looking at college costs, here's one thing I have to tell you, because it's serious. And we've done the math so many different times in this office for folks. Mm-hmm. But when your kiddos go to school, the object is we are investing in their future. And in that future, they're just basically getting trained up on what they're going to do next, right? And so when you think about that, they have 40 potential working years from the time that they go to that school until the time that they probably need to pay off that debt, because that's about when their retirement happens. So they can get loans, they can work, they can do things to help them pay for that education. But here's the trade-off. If you're writing a check and paying for that as opposed to writing a check to your own retirement, guys, there's no one out there that's going to give you loans for retirement. They just don't exist. It's easy to get a loan for college. Right. And we're going to talk about some of those right now because some of them are better than others. Okay. But when you think about it, no one is going to give us a loan for retirement. Your kid's got time. That's what they have.
Such a great way to look at it, John, because I do think we put the pressure on ourselves, that whole, let me help my kid graduate debt-free. But wait, because to your point, when you're younger and you can get the loans that you can't get once you're 60, 70, or 80.
It's the truth. And even if someone will give it to you, it's so much more important.
Right. What's the cost?
Because the cost and everything else. Plus, when we get to our late 50s and early 60s or mid 50s to 60s, guys, those are often our biggest earning years.
Right.
Those are the years that we should really be doubling down on trying to get money saved so that we can retire one day. I don't know what you all out there think the state of the economy is, but it's interesting. And then on top of that, we have debt, U.S. debt, that's over $40 trillion. So to me, having money in those retirement accounts is so important. Your kids, they may really want to pay for a Duke education or Dartmouth or a really expensive state school. But to be honest with you, could they get just as great of an education at the local university, right? Or a less expensive option? The first 2 years at a community college, prove that they can cut it, and then go ahead and go to a better school or something they feel more comfortable in, because it's really important. But some of the numbers that I saw recently when we said we were going to talk about this, that kind of just really was alarming to me. So in 2014, they did a study, and there was about $62 billion of PLUS loans out there. Now, Heather, a PLUS loan is when a parent says, okay, my kids got their financial aid award, and here's this letter. It looks like they're going to have about $25,000 a year extra that they're not going to get full financial aid for. So we can do a PLUS loan, which is signed for by the parents. So the crazy thing is in 2014, Heather, that number was $62 billion of student loans out there that were signed for by parents, called PLUS loans. Mm-hmm. As of the most recent number that we saw come out, which I believe was earlier this year, there's over $110 billion. We've nearly doubled the amount of loans that parents have signed over for their kids. And that is alarming to me, because many of these people, they have probably, especially if they've taken these loans out, they've probably underfunded their own retirement, which is almost insult to injury. Because guys, the other thing is this is not an obligation that you can even transfer over to your kids. Bar none. This is an obligation that the parent takes on, and the child will have to refinance it privately later for you to give them that loan. They can't just assume it.
Wow.
And so the more recent numbers that I saw, the new PLUS loans that are coming out for this 26-27 school year are 9%. That's the going rate. The lowest rate is a 9.07% interest rate.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Think about that for a second. But here's the other crazy thing. They're also going to hit you for a 4% origination fee. Now, guys, this is basically a quote-unquote government assistance type Parent Plus loan. This is the stuff that they throw out there and say, this is good for you to engage in. I disagree. I think it's horrible. So to not fund your own retirement and instead to take on one of these loans so your kid can go to their dream school, I just really think that you need to really have some real thought to that. Just find out for sure, are they going into a career path that is really, really important for them to go to a particular school, or are there better options?
By the way, if you have questions for Jon and his team at J. Hagan Capital about financially helping out your kids or grandkids with the cost of education, or if you're already doing so and how is that playing out in your plan, reach out at J. Hagan Capital. They can go through those numbers with you. The number to dial, 502-317-0840. You can call or send a text to that number. Just text the word plan. 502-317-0840.
And here's where I was going to go with that, because I was remembering from back in the day, let's call them Linda and David. So Linda and Dave were the same situation. They got their student loan financial aid reward for their daughter, and they were going to be about $30,000 shy. So they decided, they were looking at it. They were looking at the Parent Plus loan, and we were going to figure out if it was going to fit. The crazy thing is that when they looked, and here's what got them to not do it, regardless of what we were saying, what they said was, oh my gosh, Jon, we finally saw when the payoff date was going to be. And by the time that payoff date happened, Dave would be 69 years old. 69 years old by the time that Plus loan would have been paid off, which is crazy. So the whole point is Linda was like, listen, this is our only daughter. We want to make sure she's in the right spot. I get it. Yeah. I've got 2 little girls myself. Yep. I want to do everything for them. But to think that I would not only not be able to save for my own retirement, I would potentially be obligated to pay for their education until nearly age 70. That's when they realized, oh my gosh, this was not great, because they realized they weren't giving up on paying for education for their daughter. They were giving up their own retirement dreams by giving up all of their 60s by potentially making debt payments. And that's what they realized, they weren't funding a degree. So that was that whole thing. So they drew a line instead and said, here's the point. Mom and dad will help you with whatever we can. And it wasn't 30 grand. It was more like 8 grand. That's what we can help you with. And outside of your loans, that's what you have. It turned out their daughter ended up changing the school to a lesser expensive opportunity because she got better student aid or more awards or more scholarships or whatever she got. And they ended up actually not having to fund that $8,000. Here's the craziest thing. Their daughter ended up loving that school.
Oh,
that's the whole point.
Good.
So instead of them potentially underfunding the retirement to not be able to live that way they wanted, their daughter ended up with a great situation, and it didn't put them into debt or not allow them to save for their later years. So this is one of those things for us to all consider, especially when we have those children we love. We want to do any and everything for them. It's kind of like putting your own oxygen mask on first when you're in the airplane.
Yeah.
You have to be certain, because if you pay for their education, but then they still have to support you in your retirement because you don't have enough money.
Yep.
Guys, did you really help them? I would go so far as to say, no, that didn't help them one single bit. We should have encouraged them to make a responsible and wise decision in the front end so that you all don't need help, so that we all don't need help in our retirement years from them, because that is going to be when they're the most stressed. Hopefully, they're going to have a great job that's a little, that they got to work hard for. They'll probably have young families, and they're going to have their own responsibilities. It'd be a lot better if we could do it that way. So when it comes down to student loans and all these things, look through it carefully. There are so many great ways that we can get education that don't require super expensive loans for us, or to not have us save for our retirements.
Jon and his team, they are here to help you understand how helping your family can actually help or might actually hurt all parties involved. It begins by sitting down, having a conversation, understanding what your goals are for you and your family, what your savings are, and then aligning those two together for the road ahead. Let's start that conversation. The number you're dialing is 502-317-0840. 502-317-0840. You can call or send a text to that number. If you are near or in retirement, if you've saved at least $500,000, this review process, no fee, no obligation to you, just empowering you with information about what your options are for yourself, for your spouse, for your kids and grandkids, for your family. 502-317-0840. You can call right now to schedule a time on the calendar, or just text the word plan to that same number, and we will text you back a link to our calendar you can schedule right there from your phone. 502-317-0840. You can also go to the website. It's retirementsolutionradio.com, or the number you're dialing right now, 502-317-0840. Ladies and gentlemen, you thought the day would never come. You thought you'd never see it. The day that the boomers and the Gen Zers are aligned in thought.
What? The boomers and the Gen Zers are aligned? What happened?
In thought, mind, and doing. They have come together. The wall.
In a kumbaya moment? Yeah, maybe not.
Everybody hold hands. Let's sing along. So the Wall Street Journal says that Gen Z is being called the Roth generation.
Ooh,
and it's largely due to the advice that they are getting on social media. Here's a little sampling.
Open a Roth IRA. Every dollar you put in grows tax-free forever.
I'm going to go through step-by-step how to invest your Roth IRA.
I took a look at my Roth IRA's contributions, and for the first time in my life, I'm glad to say that I maxed mine out. I'm going to show you exactly how I did it.
How proud are we of these little hatchlings?
Look at that. Look at that.
These little chicks.
See, who is it that's always said that, was it youth is wasted on the young?
Uh-huh.
Whoever said that, they'd be much better than we ever given them credit for.
Listen,
right?
Apparently some of them are listening and learning and leaning in. 75% of Gen Z investors who contributed to an IRA in the first quarter chose a Roth account, Jon.
Sure.
They're not the only ones embracing Roth strategies. Roth conversions by boomers jumped 41% during that same time period. So
sure.
It's been a while since we've done some Roth 101 and dug into just the benefits, the pros, the cons of Roths. And that's what I wanted to go through with you here a little bit today.
Yeah. So the one big thing to all understand is that a Roth IRA, a lot of people, in their late 50s, 60s, 70s, they didn't have them because they didn't really exist. So
Right.
The Roth really didn't come out to the retail public until 1999. So many of us were already doing our own thing. We were putting our money away in our 401ks. We would get our company match. We never paid attention because our 401k provider didn't offer Roths at that point in time. They were just for IRAs at the bank or at the local brokerage place. And so we just didn't know about it. And then also, it wasn't sold as much back then. It was kind of like, hey, you can put your money in this Roth thing, but you're not going to get a tax break. I remember that is exactly where I remember the guy that had me set up my first Roth.
Yeah.
And it was probably 2001 or something like that, maybe 2002.
Yeah.
So the market had already fallen from everything. And his whole point was like, hey, if you buy low after the dot-com bust, the good news is all that growth is potentially not going to have any tax on it at all. That's what I remember. But here's what he said, though. But it's a big change, though, John. You're not going to get a tax break for putting your money in. So because of that, a lot of people didn't do it. But here's the craziest thing. I was talking a few weeks ago. I'm going to call him Marty. So Marty, 68 years old. He was a plant manager for basically his whole life. Mm-hmm. And he was really smart. He'd saved tons of money, almost all of it in his 401k at his job. He was thinking about retirement, but he was talking, I think he said, I can't remember what it was, last Thanksgiving, or maybe it was right after the holiday when he met with his granddaughter. And she had gotten her first real-time job. 23 years old, her first real-time job. And just like you played that clip, there was people that said she should open a Roth. And she did it because all of the cackling on the interwebs, right? On the TikTok. Okay. Everyone should open a Roth. Well, so here's the funny thing. He smiled about it because he was, intrigued and then also proud of her at the same time. Man, she understands this is going to be tax-free money. And what he started thinking about, though, Marty started thinking, how come it's good for her? Why is it good for her to have tax-free money, but no one ever told me it might be good for me to have tax-free money? So he started going through it and he realized, well, no one had really just ever talked to him about it. And if they did, it was, his ears were closed because I was like, well, I got all my money in my 401k. I got a tax break for it. I'd rather have a tax break while I'm in my good earning years. What he realized is that when it comes down to RMDs off his couple $1,000,000 that he's got saved, he is going to have a higher tax bracket in retirement because he owes the government on every single one of those dollars that he has in his IRA.
Yeah.
That's the issue because he got the tax deferral. And what his point was, he goes, wow, I can't do much about that part. I got it in there, but how do I get it out? And what his real thing was is he recognized that because of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act and the GOP tax law changes that happened last year in 25, there truly is 2 years right now of the current tax code that we're aware of. But his fear was, listen, I'm really worried the government's broke. They're not going to maybe have enough money to pay for things. Where are they going to go after for money? And then he remembered one of the stories that I had said on the show before, which is, hey, remember what Hillary said in 2016? She figured that she could figure out how to knock off all the national debt if she just took all that money left over in all those IRAs and 401ks that we have tax deferral and we owe the government when we're gone and our spouse is gone. Her proposition was over 60%. I think it was 67% tax on that money before it goes to our heirs. And so his whole point was, man, I don't want to do that. I don't want to give it all up that way. So because of his granddaughter listening to TikTok to put money in a Roth is what made him do the research to figure it out. Okay. And what he found it does make sense for him to convert to a Roth. And when we do the math in our office, it is often the case. Even if your CPA says it doesn't make sense, what math are they looking at? Are they looking at just the math of paying the conversion, or are they looking at the math in the long run when you can reduce your RMDs, potentially reduce your IRMA in the long run as far as giving to the next generation? Have they put in consideration that maybe you have really successful children who are in much higher tax brackets than yourself? You don't want them to inherit it and have to pay more taxes just because they do well than you could have paid yourself. All those things he put into that and made the realization he needed to do Roth conversions, but he couldn't do it all at once or he would throw himself into a crazy tax bracket and his IRMA would go through the roof. So we did the math. And what we found out was there was about a 4-year window where it made sense for him to actually do conversions. Now, not to get his tax deferred bucket to zero. That's not the objective. The objective was to get his tax deferred down so that the money that he was pulling out of it, he was going to pull out to live off of anyway. That was a big difference. And by doing that, we're employing essentially two different concepts, bracket bumping, right? And then playing to the top of the marginal bracket list. Those two things are what we realized he should do. But isn't it crazy that the Gen Zers, they're talking about it? Maybe it's just because they're all influencers now and they all got to influence someone. And the Roth seems like it's the most easy thing to talk about because it seems like a slam dunk. But even for 68-year-olds, it may make a tremendous amount of sense, but you need to do the math.
Doing the math is not something that comes easy to a lot of us, especially when it comes to tax strategies. So if you've got questions about that, Jon and his team, they are here to crunch the numbers, do the math for you, and then show you what your options are in regards to Roth conversions, how to hopefully ease yourself from some of the tax burdens that you might face in retirement. 502-317-0840 is our number. 502-317-0840. You can give us a call or send a text to that number. We will text you back a link to the calendar. You can schedule a time right there from your phone. 502-317-0840. You can also go to retirementsolutionradio.com. I love the story about, what was his name? Did you say Marty?
Marty. Yeah.
I love that his granddaughter is teaching him, as are the social feeds, the TikToks. What about for somebody who is in retirement? Maybe they're already retired. They are wondering, maybe they're even thinking, I'm too late. There's nothing I can do. I feel like that's a real thing for somebody maybe in their late 60s, early 70s also.
Yeah, and so what I would always say, and it's something that my granny told me, she was like, it's never the wrong time to do the right thing. You just want to make sure it's right for your reasons, okay? So when we did the math, and by the way, Marty in this example was 68 years old, 68 years old and was a millionaire, so he had done well for himself. But what I didn't say earlier, which is what I found to be so refreshing and great, most people look at it like, oh, but I've got to pay the taxes on the move. Oh, I've got to pay taxes when I convert it from the traditional to the Roth. I don't know that I want to do that. I don't know if I want to do that. Well, when you do the math, and this is what I say, when you do the math, if he just lived to the same age of his father, which basically was right at life expectancy, right about 82 years old, from 68 to 82, and his wife lasted a normal life expectancy, they would expect to save a little over $600,000 over the course of their retirement in taxation. That is simply by applying a very smart principle of making sure we go up to the top of our tax bracket on conversions. Yes, we're paying the taxes, but his whole point was, and I agree with this, at least right now, yes, the government is still getting more and more and more in debt. But at least right now, we know that we have this tax code for 2 more years. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in a midterm election. I have no idea what's going to happen in the next generation or the next administration. No one does. But the idea is to think that the government will have a lower tax rate in the future than now, I think, is pretty naive. Or at least I don't think it's well grounded. Because again, $40 trillion, guys, 1 trillion seconds ago, if you just were to think 1 trillion seconds ago was 30,000 BC, 30,000 before Christ, 30,000. 32,000 years ago was 1 trillion seconds ago. And our nation has 40 times that in dollars of national debt. Yeah. Those are staggering numbers. Yeah. And again, we don't have to pay it off to zero. That's not the point. But how can we keep paying for Social Security, Medicare, paving the roads, redoing bridges, national defense right now, right? Not even talking about, anything else that the current administration is doing, much less another one. So when you think about that, guys, the shoe will drop at one point where the government's going to need more money. If we do things correctly, we will have already used the laws in our favor and the rules in our favor so that we know if we do have to pay future taxes, we want to know what they are. We do not want to be blindsided by a potential 60+% tax on our life savings where we can least afford it, or even worse, that's the money that goes to the grandkids. You'd be better off spending it on your own than leaving them anything in that example. Wow. If they're going to give away 70% and you would have potentially only paid 20 to 24. So when you think about that, just make sure that it makes sense for you.
When it comes to taxes, for a lot of us, it's about the long game. So do you have a long-term plan when it comes to your taxes? If not, let's get to work helping you understand what your options are to potentially reduce what you have to hand over to Uncle Sam in retirement. 502-317-0840 is our number. You can call that number to set a time on the calendar to start the conversation with Jon and his team about your own retirement tax plan. 502-317-0840. You can also send a text to that same number. Just text the word tax to 502-317-0840. We will text you back a link to our calendar. You can schedule your first appointment right there from your phone. 502-317-0840. If you are near or in retirement, if you've saved at least $500,000, this is a no-fee, no obligation initial review process for you, just empowering you with information about what your options might be. You can also go to the website. It's retirementsolutionradio.com or dial the number right now, 502-317-0840. So we've talked before about Shark Tank and how much we love that show. It's so fun to watch.
It's awesome, because so often, before that show, we always hear about American ingenuity, right?
Yeah.
We always hear about American entrepreneurship, but you don't get to see how did they start, or maybe they even didn't get to market yet. Mm-hmm. What are people thinking about?
Yeah.
What are they doing in their garages? What are they doing in their backyard? Because some of those people on there I find to be unbelievably motivational, unbelievably great. And then you hear their circumstance, their background, you're like, oh my gosh, how many wonderful people are there out there doing great things that we just never hear about?
America.
Or it's just not in our area.
America.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, as it turns out, the entertainment of the program might be the best thing going for us Americans. So let's dive in. Some financial offers, they can sound very impressive. They're very glossy. The slick forms, the fancy environment of the different financial places that you might go to learn more about these different offers, kind of like the deals that you see on Shark Tank. Comedian Gary Gulman has got opinions, John.
If you have an idea, do not go on Shark Tank. There are places that offer much better terms than the Shark Tank sharks. So here's a place where you can get better terms than the Shark Tank sharks, and this is where you should take it. A bank. They make reasonable investments in small businesses. You know who else offers better terms than the Shark Tank sharks? The devil. He'll take your soul. He will not take as much of your annual net income as the Shark Tank sharks.
Now, ever since I've heard this, I'm going to watch the show through a different lens, because I'm going to be sitting there with my laptop, like searching, is this really a good financial offer? Because it can be, and when you're on TV and there's this big set, and then there are these celebrities sitting right there in front of you, and they're so fancy and smart, and they're talking fast, John. And, the same can be said for people that come wandering into your office wide-eyed, just trying to do well by themselves. We can get so easily seduced by complicated strategies because they sound good and they sound fancy. But when it comes to our retirement planning, at what point does complexity become the disadvantage?
Yeah, I think that happens a lot. I think a lot of people feel, that what they own or what they have or they've put money into, they feel that, it is right for them because of familiarity. Right.
Okay.
And then there's I see it all the time. Someone will say, hey, John, I've got these 37. I know I have diversification. I've got 37 different mutual funds in my 401k. And then when you look at them, they all sound great. Overseas fund, international, emerging markets. That's all 3 words to say basically the same thing. It's probably not U.S. companies. It's okay.
Oh, okay.
But when you look at some of those different investments, some of them may have an internal cost of like 2% a year.
Yeah.
We were talking the other day, one of the advisors in the office, and we were talking, it was like, this wonderful lady came in. And we were having a conversation, and she said she really liked her person, and even though she loved everything that we had to say, because we were going to make it simple, we were going to make sure her money was protected, we were going to make sure that she could get the income that she needed, we were going to be tax efficient, and that she knows exactly where the money would go if anything happened to her. She loved all that, but she said, "But I really like my person." I was like, "No problem." And the advisor was going through it with them, and they realized they were being charged nearly 2% a year on the inside of mutual funds that she was unaware of. But then they were also paying her advisory fee of about 1.5%. So this wonderful lady who loved her relationship was paying 3.5% a year, which is a tremendous amount of money for money management, because she did not have some of the other things she needed. She didn't have an income plan. She didn't have a protection plan. And it was all because she thought it sounded good. right? Like Shark Tank is, it sounds so good. It sounds so right. I see what's going on. It looks so I got 37 different funds. How can this not be good? It was unbelievably expensive. And that's really what it boiled down to, Heather.
Put some reality on those numbers for somebody. Let's say, for example, so you have $1 million you're saving. For example, I'm not saying that's what this woman had, but say you have $1 million. What is 3.5% of $1 million?
$35,000 a year, but more than that.
That's going out of your pocket.
Compounds.
Yeah.
It compounds. So when you look at it, so her real rate of return over about the last 12 or 13 years has been around 7.5%. Overall, that is not bad. But had she just been at Vanguard and had the same advisor, she would have, instead, in that example of $1 million, she'd have closer to $1.6 million simply off the difference in fees. $600,000 more dollars simply because of the difference in fees. And that is not even remotely saying that her advisor is a bad person. Not at all.
Right.
But it's expensive. And that's what the comedian was talking about, the Shark Tank. Hey, it sounds so good. It sounds great. The way that show is built, it's built for entertainment, right? Or infotainment. We get some information, but it's really entertainment. Yeah. And the same thing with a lot of Wall Street products and how things are done. Wall Street. So the big thing about Shark Tank is the pitch is the product, right? Everyone that comes out has their pitch, and the pitch is what they're trying to sell. See, Wall Street learned that trick forever ago. Jack Bogle, the founder of Vanguard, talked about this all the time in all of his original books that he wrote. He said that they know the trick to dress up a simple idea just enough with enough layers that it makes you feel like you're buying genius. But when you actually undo that packaging, it's just a bigger fee stapled to a simple design. And that's often what it is. So Jack Bogle, that was his impetus. He was like, listen, the two things he said, that was one of them. And the second was, listen, he was talking about Wall Street. He was talking to one of the junior brokers that was on the street, because Bogle was on the street in the beginning before he said he was fired. He said, listen, here's the thing about Wall Street. Ain't nobody here know nothing. And what his point was, everyone looks at these people like they know everything.
Yeah.
They don't. Yeah. They don't really know everything. They know a lot of stuff. They're smart people, but they have no idea what's going to happen next. Not a clue. So Jack Bogle started Vanguard, and we love Vanguard in our office. It's not the only thing we use. There's all kinds of great, low expense, high quality things that have a great track record. But when you think about that, that's what we're looking for, right? So all the sexy stuff, all the stuff that, those products, the flashing lights and the gleaming arrows, and Blake Shelton used to do that finger point thing in himself. Hey, look at me. Hey, look at me. Look at me. Or Mr. Wonderful doing his thing on Shark Tank. Yeah. It's all just a way to try to get attention. But at the end of the day, sometimes the simplest plans are the ones that work the best. And it's simple, guys. If you think about it, there's 5 things that everyone needs in retirement. 5. And if you don't have all 5, you could actually be missing something that could cause some issues. The first thing we have to have is protection. We have to know what percentage of our money is protected in a way that we can't lose it. Why? Because if we lose too much, we maybe won't be able to retire. It doesn't mean, put it under the mattress. It just means we have to know, in this example, $1 million, how much of that do we have to have safeguarded so that we can live to fight another day? Do we have to keep 600,000 safe, 680,000, 440,000? That's what we need to know. So number one, where's protection coming from? It's not a product. It's an understanding and a philosophy. Number 2, where is your income going to come from? So after protection, where's the income going to come from? Are you going to do part-time work? Are you going to turn on your Social Security? Are you going to do it at 62, 67, 70? Are you married in that situation? Are you going to turn one on quickly and the other on later? Are you going to bridge that, right? So income is the second piece, because without income, we can't stay retired. Even if we have no debt, we still got to pay for utilities, still got to pay for food, still got to pay for healthcare, right? So income is number 2. Number 3 is tax design. Once we figure out the income we want to spend, then we want to figure out how can we keep more of it in our pocket and out of the treasury, right? Whether it's the state treasury or the local treasury or the federal treasury. We want to keep our money. So tax efficiency is so super important. Maybe that means we look at Roth conversions. Maybe that means that we don't own interest-paying assets in a taxable account, because that's one of the most oppressive tax structures in the entire tax system. So those are the first 3. And then the last 2 are wealth transfer. Where does the money go when something happens to one of us or the last of us? And then lastly, healthcare. How can we pay for that without getting super expensive insurance? And how can we know that it's going to be tax efficient so that when we do pull money out, it doesn't throw us in a higher tax rate on top of that, leaving a surviving spouse with no money? Because unfortunately, that's kind of what happened to my mother. So those 5 things, protection, income, tax strategy, wealth transfer, and healthcare, they're simple 5 things, but if they don't work together, then you're going to have gaps in your plan, and it's those gaps where all the money gets siphoned out. So getting a coordinated plan is the most important thing we can do. I know it sounds simple because I talk about it every single week on this show to the point where it's almost ad nauseum, but it is the truth. Mm-hmm. And sometimes simplicity is the greatest thing that we can do to simplify our lives in some aspects that we know will work. Is probably one of the greatest things we can consider doing for ourselves.
By the way, the number 502-317-0840. You can call or text to begin the conversation with Jon and his team about simplifying your plan. And that's actually the 6th element I'm going to add to the 5 pillars in that plan. Number 6, though, a plan that's simple. You understand those 5 pillars, because how often do you see somebody that walks in the office with one of those 70-page documents from their financial institution just riddled with numbers and hieroglyphics and Latin? It's like, I can't read this. You need to be able to understand it as well.
It's funny you say that. There was a gentleman that came in a few weeks ago, and he had this real thick. It looked beautiful. It even had like a leather bound, a binder on it from his current advisor.
Did it look slick and fancy and gorgeous?
Awesome.
What did we just start by talking about?
I know. And I was like, hey, what does that tell you?
Yeah.
He goes, I have no idea what it says. I have no idea what it says.
Mm-hmm.
And realistically, a solid plan you can get on a front and back of one sheet of paper. It's not going to have all of the granularity,
right,
but you will be able to understand simple elegance. The best plans are the ones that you can see completely transparently that they should work. Those are the good ones.
Let's begin the conversation helping you understand about your plan, your money, your future. It's retirementsolutionshow.com, or just click on the links we've got posted in the show notes.
Thanks for listening to the Retirement Solution Podcast with Jon Hicks. Begin the conversation about your savings plan with Jon and the team at J. Hagan Capital by visiting retirementsolutionradio.com. Be sure to listen to Jon's radio show, The Retirement Solution, Saturdays at 8 a.m. and Sundays at 9 a.m. on News Radio 840 WHAS.
J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is licensed in your state, please call 502-690-5635. J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency and does not provide legal or tax advice. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through J. Hagan Capital, LLC, NPN number 1882794.